This is your next panel. It's called, Is Hybrid a Four-Letter Word? I think I can spell. I don't think it is, but we're going to find out what these guys are on about right soon.
And of course, Trish Knox from TK Events. You're welcome.
All right, we're back, everybody. Coming in from the break. It's so good to see people again, isn't it? It's very, very nice. What, did I lose a panelist already? I turned for half a second. My goodness. All right, we're talking about hybrid, and it's interesting. I've had two interesting experiences with hybrid. It goes one of two ways. One is the client's like, yeah. We want to do a fully hybrid experience, live taking the lead. Make sure you find out a way that we can, integrate the virtual side of things. And then they get the budget, right? And then suddenly it's a live event until a week out, when suddenly they see that many other people don't actually want to come to the event, and then they tack the virtual back on. And that's the thing about hybrid is, I think that when we talk about hybrid and the way that the clients talk about hybrid is they just think it's about switch flipping. And so that's where I want to start. I want to start with a kind of a definition from each of you is, what does a good hybrid event look like? And then we're going to dive into some of the specifics that we're dealing with. So let's start on the end. In fact, before we do that, why don't we get you to introduce yourself and tell this audience why you're so important to them.
My name is Matthew Byrne CSEP. I am an executive producer, event technologist, and guy who does stuff for events, generally. And why I'm important to this audience in the context of hybrid events is I have a firm belief that no matter what you're doing, production value matters. There's a hashtag, you'll see it on LinkedIn. And especially when it comes to hybrid events, if you're not focusing on that, I think you're missing opportunity.
Awesome. We're going to come back to that idea of production value in a couple minutes. Trish, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Trish Knox, the owner of TK Events. We are a live event agency with a virtual venue platform. So we have a great integrated solution for both live and virtual events. We, during the pandemic, grew our team from 13 to 28. So we are well poised to deliver on events. We have teams in Toronto, Vancouver, and an office in London, UK. So I'm looking forward to the discussion.
What's interesting is everybody seems to have one item of clothing that's really interesting: cool shirt, cool pashmina, and cool socks. What's the story with the socks?
Well, I'm Anthony Vade. I'm an event experience strategist with Encore, and I do have Vegemite on my socks.
Vegemite, very nice.
As you may notice by the accent, I'm originally from Australia. So a little bit about me. For the last 20 plus years, showing my age, I've had the distinct privilege of traveling all over the world, helping event professionals get more out of their events. The last 6 years, I've really focused in on human-centered design, bringing methodologies, process to the events industry to really make sure that our events create meaningful impact, measurable impact, and bring about the change that was talked about in that first panel. Events have the power to transform, but that takes a lot of intention and focus. So that's been.
You're the design thinking guy, is what you're telling me.
I am a design thinking guy. Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we start with you? From your perspective, when you look at hybrid events, what is a good hybrid event?
So I think hybrid is one of the latest buzzwords in our industries that's starting to lose meaning, or we've started to confuse. Because if we strip it right back down, hybrid means nothing more than combining two things that weren't combined in the past. And to your earlier point about flicking a switch, it's never that easy, and it's never that simple. And we're dealing with a world where we have preconceived, pre-established, well-established digital behavior. We interact with the digital world in certain ways, and that's been established over time through social media and online buying and all of those elements. And then the pandemic hit, and we went, oh, great, let's make digital events that are just like events. Let's make sure that we can just cram that event experience into an online platform, and we sort of didn't think about the behaviors that are already established, and we all went, oh, no one's engaged. Yeah, because we don't engage online in that way. So I think one of the challenges we have now as we look at hybrid is sort of taking a step back and starting to understand, okay, what behaviors exist in the digital space, what limitations, what opportunities exist, and then how does that relate to events? We spent 2 years experimenting. because we were forced to. And I think now it's time for us to sort of now look at it and go, okay, the experimenting's over, what worked and what didn't, and now let's lean into those elements, the constraints and the opportunities together as an industry so that we can evolve out of this.
This is a very common thing in most industries, I think, that we didn't realize, which is the skeuomorphic approach to things. So remember when you got your first iPhone? Right? And the little icons on, like for YouTube, was like a television set and a radio. Like that's where we start with the things that we know and understand. And then real innovation kind of gets born of that as we get further and further away from that. All right, Trish, what do you think? When you're looking at hybrid events, and what's good to you?
I think we have to go back to the beginning, which was we really found a way to connect people in a very disconnected world. And I think as we go forward, we have to remember that we have to understand our customers and our audience and what they want. And if they want to consume content, and they do want to consume content on their own terms, why would we not deliver on that? So then you come down to the how. How are we going to do that? And I think where hybrid got kind of the confusing tale was that, oh, we are going to deliver every single session in a live format so that a remote audience feels like they're live in the room, which is great and realistic maybe for a live stream keynote, but not realistic if you've got 20 breakouts and you're not going to put a camera in every breakout room and start to combine all of those audiences. So I think it's really trying to simplify the experience for your particular event. What our clients have recently been doing is live streaming their main stage, but when it comes to breakouts and other content consumption, we're either sometimes pre-recording, doing recording days so that we're streaming those on demand. And again, going back to what audiences want and are asking for, which is, I want to watch, you know, we did during the pandemic, I want to watch on a Thursday night, or I might want to go look at that session on a Saturday morning. And we should be able to let them and allow them to do that. And now you've got an opportunity for your content to be out there 365 days a year, so why not? And we're also seeing a real increase in audiences. So we just had a client event that always has 1,000 people in person. They had an additional 1,000 people attend virtually. They blew out their numbers, numbers that they've never had before. And the audience comment back, and this was an audience that was paying to attend. They have to pay for their flights, their hotels. The audience commentary back was that we were just so happy that we could still participate even though we weren't there in person. And we didn't try and bring all the audiences in all the time. I'll talk about engagement separately, but I'll pass the mic.
What's interesting to listen to both of you is, you know, again, even I can think that I got my head stuck at that a hybrid is part virtual, part live, but I've been using a phrase called campaigning, which is breaking down content where, you know, does it all have to happen at the event? Can you publish infographics beforehand? Can you get away from the model of like 2 teasers and a post-event video into like a persistent campaign? And in that way, shouldn't every event now be a hybrid event? I don't know.
So my big thing about hybrid is that it is not a format. I say this all the time. It is not a format. It is a strategy. And what the pandemic taught us was that we have the ability, and there is a customer, or I say customer, but attendee, whatever, the person who's buying into your story with your event, there's more out there than you possibly think there are. The data you've got before 2020 about, hey, we have 1,000 people who show up, you were missing the data that there was another 1,000 that were engaged in your brand, in your story, in your association, whatever it is. People get stuck on, I need to build a hybrid format. So put a camera at the back of the room, stream it out, all those kind of things. Great format, but that's not what hybrid is. The marketing industry got this 20 years ago. When the internet came out, they were like, ooh, there's another place that we can reach the people we want to talk to. That's where we can do change. And the first thing they started doing was creating integrated strategies, which is another word for hybrid. That's what we call it, hybrid in this industry, but we're creating integrated event strategy so that, you know, if my customer, my client is a consumer-facing brand, I want to hit their consumers in every way. I want to engage them in every way. I want that live event to be integrated into that, but I also want all of that hybrid content. And when we start talking about the content generation, in the last panel this morning with Carrie and Hala and all them, they're talking about content is king. We are content rulers. And if we do not find strategic ways to capture that content and turn live events into content factories that we then integrate into a hybrid strategy, we're going to miss the bus.
Sorry, one more thing. I would say too that I think it would be unfortunate if we go back to, we've all been live streaming our keynotes for years. We've been doing that and doing it successfully. But I think it would be unfortunate if we go back to just, here's a link, go and watch. I think we've proven that we can be so much better and do so much more, provide an engaging experience, provide an interactive experience. All the attendees remotely are looking for other ways to engage while they're online. So there are ways to deliver that, and I think we need to rise to the challenge and not say, oh, well, we used to just give a link and live stream it. And I think, audiences are demanding more, and I think we've delivered that more, and we shouldn't go back.
Do you have a favorite example of something that you've done or seen?
So the event that I was just talking about, in the past, we live streamed that keynote only. Here, want to watch the keynote? Here's a link. And you went on, and it was, that one web page that you always are kind of accustomed to with a slide and a brand. And now we asked the virtual audience to come into the virtual venue, and they did participate in the keynotes live, but then they had other venue rooms to go to and consume other content and download other content and engage with other executives. So why not? You've got 1,000 other people to engage with. We didn't try and do it, we didn't have executives sitting there and trying to chat live and that type of thing, because they are at the live event. So that's where I'm saying it's a balance of how you're sharing the content and the ability to keep it going so that you can engage afterwards as well.
Chat's interesting. We created this thing called a Master of Chat. So it's a second separate MC or a group of MCs that drive that engagement from that perspective.
And that goes for if you're going as far as having your exhibitors or your sponsors and not expecting the ones who are live at the event to actually be engaging with the remote audience. So there is a strategy in thinking about it, but I do think we've just got this incredible opportunity to continue to engage, because we proved it in the last few years, and audiences are demanding it. So it is up to us to kind of rise to that challenge.
So let's talk best practices. I'm sure, I have a feeling you have some ideas.
Yeah, and I love that Matt brought up the whole, the way the marketing industry approached the digital modality, and how they used it and how they viewed it, and how we haven't quite gotten there yet. And those of you who've joined me in other sessions know that I start to pontificate very fast about how events create change, and that we become markers of change over time if we do it correctly. And what digital offers us, if we understand change, one, it's inevitable. It's always going to happen whether we choose to embrace it or not, and it's incremental. It takes multiple touch points and multiple steps for that change to happen. And what digital offers us, in terms of the strategy behind it, is to unlock other opportunities to have a touch point with those various stakeholders around our events. No longer is it just when the doors open and when they close on your ballroom. It's about how do we create a meaningful journey that these participants can go.
We saw that here. We just saw, as everybody went out to break, it was very fluid, wasn't it?
Yeah, and in fact, we were behind schedule, and we didn't have, and we thought.
We're catching you up. So.
But we were able to be agile in the moment because of the way that this event's been put together.
That's right.
We could make those calls, and I think we need to maintain a healthy balance of agility in that way with our digital and in-person experiences. But the only way that we achieve that, and to your initial question, is by having a clear plan on what we're doing. What change are we trying to create through this event, and what touch points need to be in place over time to make sure that that change occurs? If we don't all agree upon the why behind, the old Simon Sinek golden why behind the event, if the entire team isn't aligned behind what their role is in contributing to creating that change, it doesn't matter which modality you activate. because you're misaligned, you're misfocused, and you're going down paths that aren't heading towards that common goal. So the first step, the first best practice is to get everybody around the same table, to really get to the core of what that event needs to change in the next immediate horizon, and then understand how that increment of change is going to be reinforced further down all the way to, like we like to say, the top of the mountain, the big overarching aim of that organization that you're supporting.
Have you read anything, heard anything, or seen anything that inspires you, besides Simon Sinek, obviously, that does a really good job of that?
Actually, during the pandemic, the Event Design Collective that Encore is working with very heavily and that I've been a part of for years, released a book called Design to Change, which is exploring that exact topic around how events are tools, mechanisms, and markers of change over time. So yes, there's,
awesome.
And there's tons of content online about that too. If you want to chat about it afterwards, please come up and have a conversation with me. I could talk for days about it, and I'll stop now.
Trish, we're going to come back to you. Go ahead. You look like you want to add something.
I was going to say, too, a lot of it is audience insights, too. So our clients are going out to their audiences and their customers and getting that data on how they are going to attend. So the particular client we were talking about, the event was in July. We've been planning for a year, trying to understand, are 1,000 people going to come? We think 500 people are going to come. How are we planning for this? Are we going to make sure that we still have a virtual component so that during the pandemic, they had 4,000 and 5,000 people attend that conference. So we didn't want to lose those 4,000 other people. Then they were even more successful, and you're probably all seeing this, is the return to live events is more successful, and it's an exciting place for us all to be. But they went out and talked to their audience ahead of time to try and understand their behavior and what their preferences were. And they, we started to hear loud and clear what the audience wanted, what their customers wanted. They were attending globally. We were getting, different feedback from different geographies, that type of thing. They ended up much more successful live than they thought they were going to be. We were adding hotel room blocks. We were doing all those things that everybody's talking about in the challenges right now. So instead of 500, there were 1,000 live, which was where they were pre-pandemic. Hit that number in the first year back. Then get another 1,000 people that they never had before. So, that's unprecedented. But I think the audience insight, it starts with that too, and that strategy.
Any best practices here? Anything off the top of your head?
I'll kick back on, in my opinion, production value is the biggest thing. Because sticking somebody on camera and it being, here's the four-letter word, shit.
Look in the camera.
Shit. Production value is enormously important. One of the things that I emphasize to people when we talk about planning how we're going to integrate hybrid into a strategy is always understanding that, yes, it seems really expensive, but it is so much more accessible now than it was even in 2018. I remember pitching a big oil company in Texas to say they had employees all over North America. They were like, well, do we take everybody from New York and San Francisco and London and yada, yada, and fly them all to Texas and give them a gun and a hat and everything like that. And we were like, well, what's the cost ratio here of doing simulcast between all of these locations? And this is 2018. And the cost differential between that and flying and hoteling and limoing everybody was so outrageous that they were like, it's cheaper if we buy a hotel and put them in it. 2-3 years later, because we as an industry were forced to, and all of that kind of stuff was already in the pipeline anyway, of people were developing this, the real cost of video transmission technology has gone from satellite trucks, like if you've ever seen a dome truck, what's known as a sports truck, those cost $158,000 a day just to turn it on, right? Now I can do the exact same thing with a 6-foot table, an internet connection, and like $12,000 to $15,000 a day, right? And so, yes, I hear this all the time. It's like, hybrid's so expensive. Now our budgets are so thin. But the ROI that you will get for a $30,000 investment to reach 1,000 new clients who will It's a no-brainer. Like, and this is
$7 a person for that event that I was talking about, virtual audience. That's what
$7 a person.
67.
67.
That's what the cost per head.
Wow.
yeah, exactly. And just like environmental, so again, the technology exists, the processes exist. You get the right people, and you focus on production value, you will win in that strategy every time.
And because I'm sitting between two production guys, I will say the production value is definitely a conversation to have, but it doesn't have to be a scary one. So, I'll go back to we all just live streamed. I will maintain that that would be lame to keep doing that again. But to up your production level to live stream a keynote, your crew's already in the room, your cameras are in the room. We're adding cameras, no more, I think I've said this to a few of our AV partners, no more locked off IMAG at the back of the room. We have a couple of camera angles. We're bringing up our lighting and the effects in the room, but we've had our remote audiences say, I felt like I was in the room, and that's what you want. And it wasn't, again, exponentially, and the way we're able to do that, well, we've already got the crew, we've already got the cameras. If you've got a big production, you've already got lighting, IMAG, all of that stuff. So it's really about adding in the right places and just putting the attention to where making sure that you don't ignore that audience. But they did feel like they were in the room, and they were commenting on that in the chat. So that's what you want to hear. And I think the production, with the two experts here, it doesn't have to be a scary thing.
So what I'm hearing here is there's a business case for it that you can make, which is a strong business case, and overcoming some of the challenges that we see, which is disengaged audiences and things like that. So we can have these not scary conversations. What's this look like 6 months, a year down the road? Like right now, it looks like we're just getting past grappling with the word hybrid and then coming into these integrated strategies. What's this look like a year from now?
And I think that's both the opportunity and the biggest threat we face as an industry. We've just experienced a plethora of data from our virtual events and new measurement points to say, were we successful or weren't we successful? And I think a lot of businesses, corporations, and the leaders or the event owners of these events that we put together are going to start demanding that kind of feedback and data from the in-person experiences as well.
Or if it results in pipeline, they're like,
Yeah.
that was easy.
They really want measurement from why am I hosting an in-person event?
Yeah.
Why am I embracing all of this risk of bringing people together? Financial risk, duty of care risk, the labor crisis considerations as well. Why am I embracing this if I can't turn around to my event owner, the CEO, the C-suite, and say, here is the measurable success that we had, here is the measurable outcomes, and here is how it integrates into our ongoing communication plan, and how we're going to continue to measure that over time. So
And just because we're at a nascent area, we talked about measurement for so long and not done an effective job at it. What are the benchmarks and metrics that are good to be able to share with that C-suite?
And that's part of the challenge, because you need to start with measurement in mind at the very early phase of designing and putting the event together. So often we get to the latter phases where we've put the event together, we've focused on the logistics coordination, the operation stuff that we love and we're great at, and we've missed the opportunity. We better measure this. How are we going to measure it now that it's designed? We'll send the survey out 2 weeks later, right, after everyone's forgotten about the experiences. So what I've been working with my team on is, we need those surveys after the event, but then we have this other opportunities, whether it's device-based polling, which we did a bit of in the past. We also send people down to observe the way people are behaving and document that on site and make some people who are trained in behavioral science.
I heard the World Economic Forum in Davos 4 years ago, they used lasers to see how many people were looking down at their phones and back up, and they use that to create an engagement score.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Facial tracking we can do now to see the mood of people in the room as well. We're doing spatial tracking to see how they flow through spaces as well, and then using...
The one thing I'll just say about, like, again, like hybrid production value, all the technology exists. Like, all these, like, there's heat maps, there's beacons, there's, hacking into everybody's phone to figure out how many people are in what room. Like, all of these some of them are creepy, but they exist. To jump on something you were just saying, Anthony, was at the beginning what KPIs are going to be measured for success in everything. Like if you're hiring an employee, you are looking at what you want them to accomplish and how you're going to measure those things. So you give them a bunch of KPIs. Salespeople are easy, make me money, right? That's like how many calls you make, how many yada yada, how many meetings you book, et cetera, et cetera. If for an operations employee, it's like how efficiently did you reduce these costs, you know, whatever the KPIs might be. In events, we for years, as you said, we have done the cool thing and it looks really pretty, and then after the event we go, hey, do we know this is a success? Let's send out a survey and figure it out. Right?
The joke I like to use is, how do you know your event was a success? Well, at the end, we got a standing ovation and the client was smiling. That was our benchmarks.
Yeah, I mean, again, very nice ones that you can put on Instagram. Good for you. But if we don't set those KPIs at the beginning, and that goes for, you know, event objectives, the level of production value, you know, attendance, like all of these metrics, if we don't set that map out at the beginning, then everything you do after that is literally pointless.
It's a good starting point, because again, if I'm sitting in this audience, I'm thinking, help me cobble this together into a process. So one of the great places to start is, and this seems to be for both this panel and the previous panel, there's a higher order of conversation around events, right? Like again, where events may have been viewed by clients as put up a stage, put up a screen, now it's, no, affect my business. And that's affect my business, whether it's like employee engagement or it's external activations, all that sort of stuff. It's a fascinating time to be part of this space.
Nobody puts on an event for fun. Like, yes, fun can be part of it. Yeah, I like having like, if anybody was out at Arcane last night, we had a couple of drinks, it was a lot of fun, right? But I'm not here just to have a good time. I'm here to be played off.
That's like our exit music. Is that our
All right,
exit
so
music?
this obviously, let's give some final words here.
Oh my goodness, that just like totally threw me off where I was going. The music's coming on, like the Academy Awards. I think that's what we're all here for. We have, and the previous panel too demonstrated that. We've got some great data now to share with you. We've got audiences' behaviors. We've got what resulted in pipeline growth, what the engagement was, and we can bring that to the table when you're trying to design your programs. And the only other thing I'll say is, again, I go back to the audience and the purpose of your event. We have clients for, you know, they have their regular HR orientation culture event, and they're doing it all virtual in a signature virtual venue because they know they can't bring everybody together quarterly the way they were. So again, it's looking at your program and what do you need to accomplish with that program. And you're always going to have the flagship conferences that are in person and maybe a little bit of, you know, the virtual complementing. And some are okay just being virtual too, and depending on what the purpose of the event is. So again, it goes back to that strategy session that we can have with our clients and our customers.
I feel like we've just started a conversation here, and all three of you are going to be around for the event, yeah? Find these people, smart people. Give us a great stuff. If we need to find you online, because you know it's hybrid, right? So where do we find you?
ByrneProductionServices.com. I have an actor's voice. I went to theater school. ByrneProductionServices.com, or most likely on LinkedIn, Byrne Production Services.
We're tkevents.ca online, TK Events on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn, Trish Knox, so feel free to connect.
And similar to them on LinkedIn, certainly encoreglobal.com and hashtag Event Canvas.
Awesome. Thank our panel here today. I hope you took away some great stuff. Thanks.